A beautiful young girl found dead. Her body allegedly left in a burned out, vacant home. The person who killed her and left her to be found by others, police say, her own father. And when police found him...
Come here, man.
Don't do it.
What's your name?
Just kill me.
Newly released body cam shows that father, an accused murderer, allegedly pulling a gun on police who are forced to open fire. We're on the case presented by Law and Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. The story we're talking about today has rocked the community of Toledo, Ohio to its core, not just for the loss of life, but for the questions that are being asked about what could have been done to stop this from happening. This is the girl who lost her life, 13-year-old Kei'mani Latigue. Police say she went missing on March 18th. 6 days later, on March 24th, this elementary school student was found dead inside a home in Toledo, Ohio. It was a burned out, vacant house. The coroner in Toledo released this statement saying an autopsy showed that Kei'mani was found with multiple incision wounds to the neck. That means something that was sharp, like a knife, was used to kill her. A day prior to Kei'mani's body being found, authorities put out an arrest warrant for her father. Here's his picture. His name is Darnell Jones. He also goes by Darnell Ogletree, according to court records. And there are plenty of court records related to this man. He has a lengthy criminal history. He's been accused of arson, assault, also illegally carrying a firearm. We'll talk a little bit more about his criminal record in just a moment, but let's get to this newly released body cam video of what went down when he was put under arrest. This video is from Columbus, Ohio police.
Come here, man.
Don't do it.
What's your name?
Just kill me. Just
Dude,
kill me.
dude, show me your hands right now.
Me, bro.
Pull your hand out of your...
Myself.
I swear to God, pull your...
Watch that there. At that moment, you can see Jones make a sudden movement and the officer fires multiple times. Now, I can't show you the moment that officers actually opened fire because of rules on YouTube. You also might have heard what sounds like Jones saying, quote, "just kill me," as the officer pulls his weapon to confront him on the street. Let's pick up this video as officers search Jones, who is on the ground, wounded, but still alive.
Shots fired! Shots fired! Dennis in a second! Get medic, please!
Don't move!
Don't move!
Alright, suspect down. All you guys are okay.
Don't move. He's got 33 right there.
33 in his hands!
No, it's a walkie-talkie, but there's 33s right here. Don't you move or you're gonna get shot, okay? All right? Got it. Yep. That's him. Somebody get out.
Somebody get on the main air. Get us a medic. I'm working on it.
Now, if you look closely at the video, you can see the gun that Jones allegedly pulled on police. At the time of this recording, Jones is still in the hospital recovering in Columbus. He faces a charge of felonious assault on a police officer on top of the murder charge that he's facing in Toledo for allegedly killing his own daughter. The head of the police union in Columbus spoke to the media after Jones was arrested. He said that there was a bolo put out for Jones and officers knew who to look for. He also said this, according to WTOL TV.
This case is one of the most horrific cases I ever heard. This is a 14-year-old that was murdered, raped, had her hands cut off, and her throat almost cut off. This is an absolute animal that came into our town.
That is a chilling, disturbing, heartbreaking description of the type of case that authorities are dealing with. We looked into Jones' criminal history. It is lengthy, it is violent, and here's what it shows. In 2011, he was arrested for arson for allegedly lighting a commercial building on fire. Then, in 2015, he was arrested for carrying a gun after being convicted of the 2011 felony arson. A witness said in that case, he had fired the gun outside a home in Toledo. Then in 2017, we found that he was arrested for felony assault, where police say Jones smashed an alternator into the face of a man and sent him to the hospital where he had to receive 20 stitches. Then in 2022, he was arrested again for carrying a weapon while having been a convicted felon. And the most disturbing charges, of course, now are the ones that he is facing for allegedly killing his own 13-year-old daughter. Court documents show he is charged with murder as well as assault and abduction. The court records say that Jones removed his daughter daughter without consent of her guardian, reportedly her grandmother, from her home. The document also says that when police spoke with Jones, he gave inconsistent statements about where he went with his daughter. This is certainly a story that sticks with you because the details are so heartbreaking, and that is certainly the case when you see how the community in Toledo, Ohio have responded to what happened. According to WTOL, Kei'mani was in the 7th grade at an elementary school in North Toledo. She was on the honor roll. She loved to play basketball with her friends. A district spokesperson said that Kei'mani was set to receive a kindness award before she was killed. And there are certainly major questions about the red flags that were potentially missed. Lucas County Children's Services in Toledo is planning to review how it handled all interactions with Kei'mani Latigue and asked the state for a review. The head of the organization told WTVG that they feel they were thorough in her case. They say that Kei'mani was in the custody of her grandmother, who did admit to using physical discipline, but they said there was no evidence that meant that Kei'mani should have been taken from the home. They also say the teen told them that she felt safe in the home. Hey, I want to take a moment and thank our sponsor, Experian, for sponsoring this episode of On the Case. Experian can help you get your finances in order. April is actually Financial Literacy Month, but Experian, they're all about that all year long. So the first step to taking control of your credit and finances is to download the Experian app. This app has tons of free tools at your fingertips to help you take control of your financial life, like your free FICO score, which can help you boost your FICO score instantly for free with Experian Boost. Free access to a marketplace of credit card, loan, and auto insurance options matched to you. Free credit monitoring with real-time alerts to keep you in the know on changes to your Experian credit profile. And let's not forget, you can easily freeze your Experian credit file for free in the app, helping you protect against identity theft. So make sure your finances are always in good shape with Experian. Use the link in the description or scan the QR code on your screen to download the free app. Results will vary. Additional rates may apply. See App Store for details. Join us now to talk more about this case is retired Judge Fanon Rucker. It's always great to have you, sir, on Law and Crime. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. This is a really tough case, just in terms of a young girl who lost her life. And then it seems somewhat complicated because you have multiple jurisdictions now after this SWAT-involved shooting in Columbus. How do the courts handle this going forward, knowing he's going to face serious charges in Columbus, Ohio, but then the more serious charges allegedly killing his daughter in Toledo, Ohio?
Well, thank you for having me today. Glad to be here, although I hate the fact that we're talking about such a horrific case. The facts and circumstances of this young girl's tragic death are almost unspeakable. As that chief said, this is one of the worst cases he's ever seen. The question of what jurisdiction handles the case first or what order is usually decided as between the jurisdictions who have the cases. A lot of times we see cases that are related, but they have handles in different courts. For example, if a federal court brings charges, a federal prosecutor brings charges against an individual for certain crimes, but they're also lateral or related state charges, they'll come up with an agreement as between the two of them, which of those charges will actually be prosecuted or the order in which they'll be prosecuted. Here, this is different because there are two state courts involved. And although the incident is related, the charges are not. There is no need to prove or disprove the facts of one in order to establish the elements of the other. So they're really unrelated. So there's any number of ways that the courts could decide which of these cases is heard first. There is no statute of limitation for murder, which is what this individual is facing in Toledo. So arguably, Toledo could say, hey, look, we can pause our case indefinitely while you handle the case in Columbus because there is a statute of limitations to proceed on. They could do that by agreement. Or Columbus could say, well, your charges are much more serious and we like the evidence that you have to move forward. We will yield and allow you to prosecute him. And then if and when he's convicted, we'll decide how we want to proceed with our charges that are, quote, less serious, although they're extremely serious. Where the allegation is he had a gun and was in a shootout somehow with SWAT in Columbus. The other thing that could happen is the courts could decide. I mean, the prosecutors, we're talking about the right of the prosecutors to kind of communicate with each other and decide how they're going to proceed. But the courts also could have a say-so. So each judge can say, this is my schedule. My schedule says that we're going to have a pretrial conference in 6 months and a trial will be conducted in 11 months. The other case or the other court could say we're having a pretrial in 5 months and our trial is going to be had in 9 months. And that then would dictate the order of proceeding because, if the courts say this is when we're going to have these hearings, then the lawyers and the defendant and the witnesses need to be ready in that court when the court speaks.
Because you look at this case and murder cases already, I mean, timeline wise, in many cases, you're talking months, if not longer, to go from arrest to conviction. Now you add on this case in Columbus related to allegedly pulling a gun. We've seen some body cam video, allegedly pulls a gun on an officer who then fires back, shooting and wounding Darnell Jones. In terms of the timeline of when he could be done facing charges, what does that look like, knowing that there are two separate cases that couldn't run at the same time?
Yeah. Well, cases can certainly run at the same time. There can be parallel charges that are prosecuted and that are handled by cases. Of course, the difficulty is here. We're talking about jurisdictions that are 100, 200 miles apart. So there's a question of extradition, which means transporting a defendant from one county or from one place to the other. And because of the expense, because of the safety concerns, because of the mechanics of doing that, it would be more efficient if the cases are heard and completed before the person is transferred to the other jurisdiction for the case to be resolved. In Ohio, we have certain timelines that judges are supposed to operate for cases to be resolved. Those timelines move, and they're also flexible, considering the seriousness of the charges. With misdemeanors, cases that a person is facing either 6 months or a year, depending on certain misdemeanor charges, the Supreme Court generally requires that those cases be resolved within a year. Felonies, kidnapping charges, rape cases, murder cases, the timeline is much longer and much more flexible. And again, the more serious charge, which means the longer timeline to have the case resolved, is in Toledo with the murder, the abduction, and what may be additional charges after more evidence is investigated and disclosed.
Yeah, it's just the details of what we've been told. This young girl, the state she was in when she was found inside this home, and I know as a judge, I mean, you've had some very, I guess, frankly, disturbing people in your courtroom who have been accused and convicted of very disturbing crimes in your career. I mean, when you look at someone like this who is accused of something not just to another human being but his own daughter, I mean, how do we, as we look at these details, try to make sense of what this suspect is accused of?
Yeah. One of my early cases as a judge involved an individual who was accused of being a serial killer. The police brought the warrant to me that justified going through his belongings and ultimately placing him under arrest, and the details of what he did to the young lady who they had the facts of and who they had found. And then the day that they brought him in front of the court with several security officers around him, it causes you to wonder, how do we as a society produce individuals who are capable of committing such, again, unspeakable acts? And then when you add the component that this is allegedly the daughter of the individual who's accused of murdering her, and then we add the element, the sexual assault, the fact that her hands were cut off, and she had significant wounds to her neck, as if and indicating that's what actually killed her. That how do we grasp and deal with that as individuals? And more importantly, what do we need to do, searching every corner of our minds to prevent the possibility of such a thing ever happening again? It's a tough question. Wish we had the answers.
No, it is. And it's one of those stories that just sticks with you when you think about like how something like this could happen. And there are certainly questions for the Child Protective Services group in the Toledo area. And they were apparently involved. They believe it was a thorough review that they had on their case, that they were in touch with this family and they're trying to figure out what more they could have done. I think about the accusations facing Darnell Jones, and for you as a judge, knowing that, let's just say it's a pretty strong case that the prosecution may have of a horrific crime that he's accused of committing. How do you as a judge still make sure that it is a fair trial and that this suspect, which at this point, as horrific as the accusations are, he is innocent until proven guilty? What needs to happen inside the courtroom to make sure that that stays that way?
In 2007, I took an oath as a judge to handle and to review and consider every single one of my cases without bias, with impartiality, and with the understanding that every person standing in front of me is innocent unless and until the state proves their case by proof beyond a reasonable doubt. It was an obligation that every one of our hundreds of judges in the state of Ohio, really across the country, agreed to accept and to execute our duties consistent with those oaths. The truth is we are human. And as much as we intentionally and deliberately put aside those biases that we may normally have as citizens, which I do have now as an attorney, that I couldn't exercise as a judge, it's difficult. But again, we have great responsibility in these positions. And so with those great responsibilities come a very focused and intentional effort to do exactly that. And that is to see that the person standing in front of us is in fact innocent, unless the charges are proven. And at that time, we are required to fairly sentence them, even fair in the sentencing. But what is fair when we consider the malicious, heinous, horrible, tortious acts of an individual? Well, the sentences, I hope, do and should reflect their actions and not our anger or bias against the individual. But it's not easy, and I won't mix words about that.
No, it's not easy, especially with the details that we're learning from police of what allegedly happened to this young girl. He's charged with murder, assault, and abduction, but especially with that murder charge, when, like what we were just saying, accusations of sexual assault, hands that were cut off from the body, it honestly hurts to even say that. But I mean, this feels like it was more than murder. It feels like this wasn't just a quick death, it seems. How could charges be added to this case? Is there a way to add charges to this case if the evidence shows that that is what happened?
Yeah, so the charges that we haven't seen, although I think they're kind of alluded to, is number one, the fact that this young lady was subjected to a sexual assault. I think specifically it says she was raped. He's not currently charged with rape. He's charged with felonious assault, which means that there was an intent to cause physical harm, and as a result of causing that physical harm, now the murder, so that those are separate offenses that could be aligned. Through further investigation or through evidence presented to the grand jury, additional charges could certainly be added. We know that abduction was added. Well, perhaps with further evidence, perhaps talking to witnesses, or even with statements from the defendant, which we don't know anything right now about what they have. We know they have charges, and we know we have some facts leading to a conclusion, but we don't know the details of what law enforcement has learned through the course of this investigation. In the coming weeks, of course, and during the course of preparing for trial, we certainly will find out that evidence. But of course, more charges could be added. Now, currently, I'm not aware whether Toledo or Lucas County is seeking the death penalty in this case. Certainly, there are facts that could be aligned with this incident that could result in the state seeking the death penalty. Again, we don't have that right now. I'm not aware that he's been charged with a capital crime. He's been charged with murder. He's been charged with murder and abduction. However, if they do add a kidnapping charge, they do add a rape charge, then they could very easily increase the significance of this charge to include a death penalty specification because of the related act that was committed in view of the murder. That is a potential.
There's a lot of questions for the local Child Protective Services organization in Lucas County, Ohio. what red flags were missed. There's going to be a review of this organization. It's hard. In when families have tough dynamics, this girl was in the custody of her grandmother. It is a tough job to work in as a social worker. How much confidence do you have in the system that is in place? Because so often when we hear about the DCF organizations of the world, it's often in the cases where something terrible has happened and there's just that question of what more could have been done.
Well, it's kind of like flying an airplane. And, there early this year, there were some plane crashes that got a lot of attention and caused a lot of people to be concerned about flying. The reality is that millions of people fly every week without any problems. All it takes is one for the rules to be reviewed and for processes to be reconsidered to see if something needs to change. The same here. The number of children that go through our jobs and family services agencies across the state of Ohio is huge. And for the most part, the processes, I think, work. And their procedures are in place because at some point in time, they decided that those were the best procedures for how to monitor and take care of the children that are under their supervision. But again, all it takes is one instance for those processes and for the individuals involved to be reviewed. I've certainly seen and at times have been involved in lawsuits against family services agencies because of something being missed and tragic results of death or rapes or serious bodily injury to children under circumstances that shouldn't have happened. I hope that that's not the case here. I do know that they're going to be investigating every step of the process. We do know that this young lady had been in the custody of her grandmother since she was an infant. We do know, according to reports, that in 2023 and 2024, Jobs and Family Services showed up to investigate because there were allegations of corporal punishment that went too far, and the grandmother was counseled as a result of it. But they concluded that there was no reason to remove the child from the home in those instances. I don't hear from those allegations anything related to the allegations against this father having committed these horrible offenses against his daughter. But I can promise you there'll be some lawyer, not only an investigative agency, but there'll be some lawyer who'll be reviewing this to determine whether there is some liable party and a proper lawsuit to be brought for failures that shouldn't have happened.
And in the case of a review of a family services agency, what does that actually look like? If the agency comes forward and they held a news conference the other day and said, we felt we were thorough, we know when they went to the house. At this point, we don't know of any interaction they had with Darnell Jones. We know about the interactions with the grandmother. What more could a review uncover that could potentially stop something like this from happening again?
Yeah. So what an investigation like that includes is a detailed review of the notes of the investigators or the social workers who visited the homes. Sure, we have an initial statement that everything we did was okay, and we concluded that those are the conclusions. Now there needs to be a detailed review of the notes that led to those conclusions. Was something missed in a sentence about there was an allegation that the father was coming around too much? There was a suggestion that simply was ignored. That's what the investigation, a detailed investigation, results in. There could be a detailed review of the file to see if there were any telephone complaints that were not followed up on, or that they were followed up on, but they couldn't reach somebody to get more information about what may have been the source of that complaint. I mean, there's any number of things that we don't know, other than right now their statement that, yeah, we investigated and we didn't find a reason to remove. Well, okay, that's the conclusion from the agency. Now let's look at how you arrived at that conclusion, and if there was something in those notes that revealed that there may have or should have been a different outcome from that investigation.
And there are just so many questions beyond the case itself that we'll be continuing to follow in this story. Retired Judge Fanon Rucker, it is always great to have you on Law and Crime, even when the stories are as difficult to talk about, just like this one. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.
Jones had been in the hospital recovering from the gunshot wounds from that shootout with SWAT in Columbus. He has now been transferred to a jail in the capital city of Ohio. WBNS reported that Jones is now being held without bond in Columbus. He waived his first court appearance, and authorities have 15 days to send him back to Toledo, where he will face the charges connected to his daughter's alleged murder. For On the Case presented by Law and Crime, I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.